So here I am today on Magic Mondays, and instead of doing a written post, I'm showing up with my capacity and what I've got today, and today is a video post for you. So instead of posting something prematurely, I am going to share with you some other things that have been on my mind a lot lately. I have been experimenting with ChatGPT in multiple ways, and one of them is on a personal support side. And a girlfriend of mine and we have what we like to call our personal podcast, and we voice note each other. And these voice notes are the most magical thing of life. I wish everybody a friendship as deep as this one. Um, and part of that, we've been sharing with each other how we're utilizing this new tool that's entering our lives at a very rapid pace and how we're navigating that mostly in business and strategies and in our businesses. And then I've started to share about how I'm integrating that personally. And one of the things that I started to do was to share with it some patterns that I've known about myself and I've been trying to work through in a therapeutic sense with my coach for years. They're patterns that keep coming up, keep coming up. One of my favorite sayings that I've heard before is history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And when you sit in those moments of it rhyming, you kind of sit there and you go like, haven't I worked through this already? Didn't I do therapy about this for hours? And I've talked about this and I see the patterns. I see it happening. Why isn't this finally breaking? So I decided to ask ChatGPT. I said, here's the pattern that I recognize within myself and these people in my life. How can I show up differently to actually break the pattern and actually change this, not just as a temporary short-term thing, but for good? And through that, it's been pulling up these archetypal patterns and reflecting it back at me in terms of archetypes. So a very common archetype you'd hear in day-to-day language is like a damsel in distress and a knight in shining armor, right? Like that's an archetype. So there's a damsel and there's a knight in shining armor, and the knight comes, and we all know that story. The knight comes and rescues that damsel in distress. But there are a ton of different archetypes that you can pull from. And one of my favorite authors, Carolyn Myss, she has books about archetypes and archetypal journeys that different of us play out in our lives. So I've been asking ChatGPT. And what's so beautiful about working with AI on these archetypal journeys is that it's not limited to your stereotypical archetypes, like the ones that are limited to the books, that Carolyn's written. It creates these new titles and these new archetypes. If you ask it from that therapeutic standpoint, because we all know these models are built to be very agreeable to the user. So you really have to prompt it to take an unbiased look, to really reflect back to you with a level of honesty and discernment, and with that intention and desire to shift and not just at a surface level. And so if you keep prodding it enough, I hope, but in my experience, it is giving some really honest reflections. And what's nice is when you can say, hey, here's this pattern I've been trying to break that I feel like I keep falling into. I just don't know how to get out of it. It's a dynamic with this person, and here's the role I think I'm playing. Here's the role that I think you're playing. Are there blind spots that I have that I'm not seeing about my own behavior? That's a beautiful question. Are there blind spots that I'm not seeing about my own behavior in this situation? You know that old saying of like, write a text and never send it? Try sending it to ChatGPT. And not from a standpoint of, well, tell me I'm right and reinforcing your position. Do it and say, what am I missing here? Reflect back at me my actions and my communication pattern. I know that's sometimes there's a lot of talk in self-help, that's like it's too it puts the weight too much on the shoulders of the person, like radical self-ownership. There are times and moments where that can be damaging, and yet there's also times where that can be just the medicine that is needed for the situation. um, So I'm speaking now from those moments where that is this medicine that is needed for these situations. I know that can't be applied across all situations, but give it a try. Give it an experiment. See what it reflects back to you from these archetypes. And once it says, like, hey, here's an honest perception of what your archetype is, ask it for the light sides of that archetype and the shadow sides of that archetype, because there are shadow sides. What happens when this archetype is in overdrive and in its shadow side and not performing optimally for me? Because even the quote unquote good archetypes, the knight in shining armor for some, might sound benevolent, but there are shadow sides to that archetype. So ask it what those shadow types are. Or sorry, not shadow types. Ask it what those shadow sides are for that archetype. And then if you get to a place where you say, okay, well, I've been living in this archetype and I don't want to remain here. I've been living in this damsel in distress, which would take on more of a victimhood archetype, or I've been living in the martyr archetype where I'm martyring myself and I just can't do it anymore. Ask it to suggest different archetypes that you could step into, and ask it for pathways and action items and rituals and steps of how you can continue to steep in these new archetypes versus the ones you're trying to step out of. That's how I've been using ChatGPT, and it's been quite effective for me in breaking some of these patterns, in changing some of these archetypes that I've been experiencing in my life. And I'm excited about what it continues to unveil. So that's my suggestion today. As you navigate this changing world with AI, I don't think it's going anywhere. And there's a lot of dialogue out there about the shadow sides of AI, the dangers of it. There's a lot of nervousness about where it goes. And the way I see it is that's very similar nervousness to when the internet started up and people were putting payments and credit cards online. And I don't know if you remember, but I remember growing up and my parents being like, you never put a credit card online. Your whole identity is going to be stolen and XYZ. And the truth is that some people have had identities stolen and passwords and stolen, and that has been the reality for some people who have put too much information online. And yet the vast majority of people, that's not their case. And the internet has brought, for every, like, if we think there's just shadow sides and light sides, the yin and the yang to everything, the internet's been that. And yes, there's a lot of shadow sides to the internet. And yet there's also a lot of benefit that the internet has brought humanity. And so when I think about AI, I think about, yes, there's a lot of shadow sides, but yes, there's a lot of benefits that AI could bring to our businesses and our lives. And probably more important than our businesses, probably more importantly, our lives. And I don't know that anybody knows what that looks like yet, but I'm very excited to continue that conversation with people to see where that could go and to continue to nurture and bring about the light side of this technology. because very rapidly people have integrated it. And actually, what I find is when you talk with people about how they are utilizing AI in their life, people are excited to talk about how they're utilizing it because people are getting a lot of benefit about it. But it's still kind of hidden from a day to day language. A lot of people still don't want to admit how they're utilizing AI in their personal lives, in their business. Um, because there's also this dialogue, there's a lot of dialogue, and it stems from the education system of using AI is cheating. And when we take that application to our adult lives and we're like, okay, so, if using AI is the equivalent of cheating on a test in elementary school or high school, therefore I'm not allowed to use it in adult life, either in my job or my business or my personal life. Therefore, people kind of hide how they're utilizing it. I think that's changing. I do think that's evolving given the rapid adoption rate of this technology over the last year that I've seen and experienced with my friends. And I'm excited to continue to breathe life into that. Not to say it's all good or it's all bad, but to really find that space and nuance in between of that gray area of how we're using AI to continue to channel that light side of the possibilities into being here. So that's the thoughts I'm going to leave you with today. And for those of you who are some of my paid subscribers, I will share with you some of the archetypes that I've been working with and navigating at this stage in my life, because maybe you can ask it about these things or prompt it or be curious with it as you would, just a friend you're talking to. So I hope you have an amazingly magical week. I intentionally do my Magic Mondays to kick off the week because Monday is such a practical day where we get things together after the weekend and we dive back into the structure of work and our quote unquote work week for most of us. Not everybody has a Monday to Friday work week, but for a lot of us, we do. And the Mondays, I try to infuse a little bit of magic so that you can carry some inspiration and some upliftment into your weeks. So I hope this video did that for you today. I thank you for being here. I look forward to continuing to be here with you each Monday. Hope you have an awesome week. Take care.